Dawn breaks. A steel battering ram shatters a suburban front's door into splinters. Flashbangs detonate, filling the hallway with blinding white light and concussive force. Tactical boots stamp over broken glass. But this violent kinetic strike was not triggered by a 911 call or a witness. 3,000 miles away, in a dead, silent, air-conditioned basement, an analyst simply takes a sip of stale coffee and clicks a mouse. The screen reads, "Predictive target, high probability." Right now, as you watch this screen, your physical reality is being translated into a digital kill list. Your phone's metadata, yesterday's credit card swipe at the grocery store, the exact GPS coordinates of your morning commute, it is all being ingested by a massive intelligence engine known as Palantir's Gotham. Ignorance of this hidden matrix is no longer an excuse. It is a fatal vulnerability. If you do not understand how this algorithmic architecture operates, you will not understand why an armed tactical team might legally breach your home tomorrow. You have committed no crime. You simply deviated from your established mathematical routine. A machine noticed that statistical anomaly and flagged your life as a pre-crime event. The front line is not overseas. It is your living room. We are stepping onto the invisible digital battlefield of the 21st century. Here, your personal, mundane data is the new gunpowder. We will pull back the curtain on the architecture of this predictive surveillance state. We will arm you with the tactical awareness required to navigate the tripwires surrounding your home. The system has already declared a silent war on your privacy. The air tastes like pulverized concrete and copper. Through the grainy, emerald-green lens of military night vision goggles, the dusty streets of Fallujah, Iraq, look like an alien landscape. Soldiers stack up against a crumbling adobe wall. A door is kicked off its hinges, vanishing into a cloud of choking dust. The squad sweeps the structure, hunting an insurgent network mapped by a glowing tablet. Then the desert sand seamlessly morphs into the pristine, rain-slicked asphalt of Los Angeles. The heat of the Middle East is replaced by the cool, neon glow of a city street lamp. A police cruiser rolls slowly through a quiet residential neighborhood. The patrol officer in the driver's seat does not look out the window. Their eyes are locked on the dashboard screen, completely illuminated by a map. To the field operative behind the wheel, the civilian street is a hostile grid. They are looking at the exact same targeting software that guided Delta Force through the combat zones of the Middle East. The interface has not changed. The threat algorithms have not changed. The only difference is the theater of operations. The tools of military occupation have been silently imported to your neighborhood. This invisible perimeter did not materialize overnight. The weaponization of civilian life began in 2003. A Silicon Valley startup named Palantir Technologies was incorporated, quietly fueled by seed money from In-Q-Tel, the venture capital arm of the Central Intelligence Agency. They were not building a social network. They were forging a digital dragnet designed for the apocalypse of the war on terror. The engineers forged a software leviathan named Gotham. In the scarred valleys of Afghanistan and the explosive rigged highways of Iraq, Gotham was the ultimate overwatch. It was built specifically to map decentralized, ghost-like insurgent networks. It predicted where the next improvised explosive device would detonate by finding invisible mathematical patterns in the chaos of a guerrilla war. It was a triumph of algorithmic lethality. But the code did not stay in the desert. By 2013, the exact same digital architecture used to hunt high-value terrorist targets across the globe was actively deployed by local police departments within the United States. a system engineered to dismantle insurgent cells, was now being utilized to track suburban gang affiliations and predict petty theft. The field operative sitting in the cruiser tonight is armed with a database more powerful than a battalion of infantry. They are not hunting enemy combatants anymore. They are hunting statistical probabilities. You are the probability. To make these local predictions accurate, the system requires a monstrous diet of raw, granular intelligence. It demands total omniscience over the domestic landscape. Gotham does not just store standard police data. It acts as an apex predator of information, fusing completely disconnected mundane databases into a single, unified theater of operations. It cross-references your automated toll booth records with your late-night pizza delivery addresses. It pulls your sealed juvenile arrest reports and correlates them with your current digital footprint in real time. Every digital exhaust fume you leave behind is immediately sucked into this centralized nervous system. The algorithm cannot distinguish between a highly trained insurgent cell moving weapons and a group of teenagers coordinating a weekend party. To the mathematical models churning inside Gotham, it is all just node-based activity. It is all just movement that needs to be categorized, scored, and neutralized. We are witnessing the ultimate boomerang effect of modern warfare. The devastating technological infrastructure we built to control distant enemies abroad has inevitably returned home to control us. The perimeter of the battlefield has collapsed. The wire perimeter has been drawn around your zip code, your street, and your front porch. You are living inside a mathematically generated kill box. The code driving that police cruiser does not care about your constitutional rights, nor does it care about your innocence. It only calculates the geometric shape of your daily habits. The terrifying question is not whether this domestic military panopticon will eventually be built. It is already online. The question is, what exact anomaly does the algorithm need to see before it decides you are the enemy? The algorithm is hunting for an anomaly, and the military-grade software processing your life is now running on local city servers. But to build a predictive model of a battlefield, a combat AI requires relentless, uninterrupted reconnaissance. It needs a target-rich environment. So, what exactly is this apex predator feeding on in the middle of our peaceful American cities? The answer is hiding in plain sight, flashing above your windshield every time you drive down the highway. Look up at the busy highway intersection. Flashes of strobe lights burst from the metal poles above the traffic. To the average commuter, it is just a minor annoyance, a standard traffic camera checking for speeders. But to the open-source intelligence targeting analyst, watching the feed from a sterile, windowless room, this is the front line. The ingestion engine never sleeps. You are leaking actionable tactical intelligence every single second of the day, and you do not even know it. We zoom into one of those glowing lenses, and the illusion of privacy shatters. The screen fractures into millions of cascading data points. These are automatic license plate readers, or ALPRs. They do not just take a quick photograph of your bumper. In major urban centers, these networked digital eyes capture roughly 1,000 scans per minute per vehicle. It is a relentless, suffocating barrage of surveillance, transforming a simple commute into a high-stakes tracking operation. The analyst tracking your vehicle does not see a citizen going to work. They see a glowing node moving across a hostile grid. The volume of intake is physically staggering. This data cascades like a digital waterfall, tearing through fiber optic cables until it slams into the humming server racks of a massive, heavily fortified farm out in the Utah desert.
The sheer physical weight of this infinite surveillance infrastructure is crushing our basic assumption of daily anonymity.
These infrared cameras are not merely logging a string of letters and numbers. They are weaponizing your physical presence. Every single flash records your precise GPS coordinates, the exact millisecond of the capture, and your directional vector of travel. By stitching these microscopic data points together, the system creates a flawless historical playback of your physical life. It can rewind your movements over months or even years, tracking you backward through time. Through the eyes of the targeting analyst, your life is an open book with no encrypted pages. They can watch your vehicle leave your driveway at dawn, track your route to the coffee shop, and follow you into the underground parking garage of your office. There are no shadows left to hide in. Every intersection you cross leaves an indelible digital scar on the mainframe. We are talking about the absolute eradication of spatial privacy, executed with cold, mathematical precision. You might think crossing state lines or county borders offers some protection. It does not. The local cops are no longer isolated. Law enforcement agencies now share this geolocational data through a hidden, decentralized network of over 80 fusion centers scattered across the country. This militarized architecture effectively erases the jurisdictional borders between your local sheriff and federal intelligence agencies. The dragnet is absolute, and the perimeter is sealed. The analyst taps a key, and the domestic map lights up like a war room. A license plate flagged by a local patrol car in Florida instantly triggers an alert on a federal monitor in Washington. This is the death of the isolated incident. Your data exhaust is being pooled into a singular, terrifyingly vast reservoir. The system is designed to consume everything, assuming that every piece of gravel might eventually hide an improvised explosive device. You are the digital gravel. The machine is not looking for a crime. It is hunting for a deviation. It is scanning the historical playback of your life for anything that breaks the baseline. The analyst watches the algorithm cross-reference your driving routes with thousands of other data streams. It is a paranoid intelligence. It connects the dots of your daily routine, waiting for a single, out-of-place variable to trip the wire. And when that wire is tripped, the mathematical kill box closes around you. Consider a perfectly legal Thursday afternoon. If you drive past a heavily populated political protest, then visit a specialized medical clinic, and finally park your car at a local gun range, the system wakes up. The artificial intelligence ingests that specific geometric pattern and immediately flags it as anomalous behavior. To the machine, you have just assembled the digital components of a threat. The algorithm does not care about your actual, entirely innocent intentions. Your constitutional right to assemble, your right to medical privacy, and your Second Amendment rights are mathematically fused into a red alert on an analyst's monitor. The system assigns a threat score to your vehicle. You have committed no crime. You have spoken to no one. But in the sterile silence of that windowless basement facility, a digital crosshair has just been painted directly onto your back. You are now, officially, a blip on a paranoid geopolitical chessboard. The adrenaline spikes for the operative watching the screen. The machine has found its target. This is not science fiction. This is happening right now, above your head, at hundreds of intersections across the nation. The cameras keep flashing. The servers in Utah keep humming, cooling fans screaming as they ingest another petabyte of our lives. The trap is set, not with iron bars, but with fiber optics and predictive code.
We are navigating a totally rigged digital environment.
They have mapped your physical movements with terrifying accuracy. But tracking your car is merely the first layer of this digital battlefield. The algorithm does not just want to know where you are going, it wants to know exactly who you are going to meet. The true horror begins when the machine takes your physical data and starts linking it to the people you love. Because in this war zone, your friends and family are about to become your absolute biggest statistical liability. Your friends and family are no longer just your support system. On this digital battlefield, they are your biggest statistical liability. The massive ocean of data we just uncovered does not sit idle in a vacuum. It is fed into an engine designed to connect the dots and build a target package out of your personal life. We are taking that raw intelligence and weaponizing your relationships against you. Inside a sensitive, compartmented information facility in Virginia, the only light comes from the blinding glare of a massive monitor. An analyst, wired on stale coffee and the cold thrill of the hunt, drags a single photograph of a suspect into the center of the screen. Instantly, a spiderweb of lines explodes outward, connecting that face to hundreds of other addresses, cars, and phone numbers. The 6 degrees of separation used to be a fun party game, a harmless way to link yourself to a Hollywood actor. Now, it is a relentless digital dragnet that can put you in handcuffs before dawn. The analyst watches the web expand, tracing the digital exhaust of your life across a geopolitical chessboard. Every text message you send, every coffee you buy, is a thread being pulled incredibly tight. To understand this weapon, we have to strip away the humanity and look at the exact math. Gotham operates on graph theory, a mathematical framework that models pairwise relations between objects. In this cold, calculating architecture, you are no longer a human being. You are simply a node. And every single interaction you have with the world around you forms what the intelligence system calls an edge. These edges are the invisible chains binding you to the grid. The analyst does not see a community. They see a cluster of nodes pulsing with potential threats. If you share a local wireless network at a cafe, you generate an edge. If you transfer $20 to a friend for dinner, you forge an edge. The artificial intelligence maps these pairwise relations with terrifying, automated precision. Let me show you exactly how fast this mathematical infection spreads. Under this system, if your cousin's roommate happens to have a prior drug conviction, they are automatically categorized as a high-risk node. If you simply call your cousin to wish them a happy birthday from your cell phone, the algorithm reacts. Instantly, your own personal threat score can spike by 40% purely due to network proximity. Think about the sheer insanity of that algorithmic calculation. You have never met the roommate. You do not do drugs. You have a completely clean record. But the math does not care about your alibi or your intentions. The digital infection travels across the edges of the graph, bleeding from one node to the next. The machine decides you are guilty by digital association, and the trap snaps shut. The targeting analyst clicks a button, and the software calculates what is known as a chronic offender bulletin score. This is not a historical record of what you have done. It is a dystopian leaderboard ranking citizens on their potential criminality before they have broken any laws whatsoever. You are being scored on a hidden matrix of violence, competing in a tournament you do not even know exists. If your score pushes past the threshold, your node turns flashing red on the monitor. The system has decided you are statistically likely to commit a felony in the near future. This leaderboard is refreshed in real time, every second of every day,
ingesting those 1,000 license plate scans per minute and recalibrating your rank. Your ultimate fate is sealed by a server rack processing probabilities. We are fighting a war where the traditional rules of engagement have been completely obliterated. In this predictive matrix, your innocence is absolutely not a defense. Your mere proximity to what the software deems bad nodes is more than enough to trigger a heavily armed tactical response from the authorities. You can do everything entirely right, and the math will still order a SWAT team to your door. The analyst leans back in their chair, staring at the fractured web of data points illuminating the windowless basement. They have found the anomaly. They do not know your name, and they do not care about your life story. To them, you are just a statistical irregularity that needs to be permanently neutralized. With a single keystroke, the target package is compiled, encrypted, and sent to the front lines. This is the front line of the modern surveillance state. We are losing the signal of human free will to a relentless barrage of automated assumptions. The system is designed to eliminate the friction of due process, replacing human judges and juries with silent, frictionless code. Every time you connect with another living person, you are inadvertently giving the intelligence apparatus another vector to attack you from. The dragnet has finished its work in the server farm. The digital ghost has made its ruling, and the coordinates have been transmitted. But the true nightmare begins when this abstract mathematics makes impact with the physical world. The targeting data is now hitting the dashboard screens of patrol cars rolling down your street, and the theoretical kill box is about to become an agonizing reality. The targeting data has made impact. That theoretical kill box generated in a windowless server room is now an agonizing reality on the streets. I am watching a squad car patrol a fractured neighborhood, creeping through the asphalt trenches. The digital ghost has taken the wheel, and the front line is right outside your front door. From the perspective of the field operative, the physical city outside the windshield is entirely secondary. The officer's eyes are locked onto a red box glowing on the dashboard iPad. This illuminated square dictates exactly where they must drive and who they must intercept. The human gut instinct of the beat cop is overridden by calculated coordinates. You might believe this deployment is preventing a crime before it happens, neutralizing a sudden threat in real time. But the chilling truth of the algorithm is far more sinister. The machine does not actually predict the future. It simply repeats the past with brutal, unyielding efficiency. We are trapped in a temporal loop coded by Silicon Valley. Look at the residents walking through this algorithmic strike zone. They are being stopped, interrogated, and frisked simply because they exist inside the geographic boundaries of that red square. They have committed no crime, yet they are treated as enemy combatants. The software has designated their very zip code as a high-probability war zone. This tactical disaster stems from a fatal mathematical flaw embedded deep within predictive policing models. Data scientists call this phenomenon a runaway feedback loop. It is a vicious cycle where the algorithm feeds almost entirely on its own exhaust, blinding the operatives to the reality of the streets. The software essentially begins to hallucinate crimes. Here is how the trap snaps shut on a community. The predictive matrix directs a heavily armed police unit into a designated target sector. Because the officers are deployed with a hyper-vigilant mindset, they inevitably find a minor infraction. They make an arrest for something as trivial as loitering, and the machine logs a successful strike. That single low-level arrest becomes a new data point, feeding straight back into the distant server racks. The system then calculates that the targeted neighborhood requires even more patrols the following day. More officers flood the streets, leading to more minor arrests. Every pair of handcuffs clicking shut mathematically validates the algorithm's bias. The dashboard iPad glows brighter, demanding more resources for the exact same street corners. To the command center watching the metrics, the software appears incredibly accurate. But they are not predicting a natural crime wave. They are artificially engineering a localized surge through sheer overwhelming occupation. The machine creates the threat. This engineered reality has devastating demographic consequences. An independent audit of these predictive data systems revealed a staggering discrepancy. The algorithms forecasted drug crimes in minority neighborhoods at exactly twice the rate of white neighborhoods. The digital crosshairs were locked onto specific communities with clinical precision. The raw data exposes the terrifying cruelty of this targeted deployment. Despite the algorithm heavily prioritizing minority areas for aggressive patrols, the statistical rates of actual drug usage between those communities and white neighborhoods are virtually identical. The machine is blind to truth. It only sees the historical prejudice it was fed. We have successfully automated human prejudice, encoding decades of flawed policing directly into pristine silicon. The code launders biased tactics by presenting them to the public as objective, unassailable mathematics. When a machine tells an officer a neighborhood is inherently dangerous, the officer believes the machine. It is an infallible alibi. From the driver's seat of that patrolling cruiser, the operative does not question the underlying graph theory or the tainted data sets. They only see the flashing red alert warning them of imminent danger. This artificial fear alters their biological response. Hands rest on holstered weapons. The threshold for lethal force drops to a terrifying minimum. The algorithmic kill box becomes a permanent fixture, a self-fulfilling prophecy of violence etched directly into the city grid. The residents cannot escape the geographic dragnet, and the officers cannot ignore the glowing screen. The system has successfully transformed a civilian neighborhood into an active theater of war, and the code is only getting hungrier. The code on the city grid is not just hungry, it is mutated beyond our control. This self-fulfilling prophecy of violence, fed by decades of biased data, has triggered a runaway chain reaction. The feedback loop is now so mathematically dense that it has effectively severed contact with human oversight. We are crossing the wire. We are entering the black box. Here on the digital front line, inside a Utah server farm, the roar of industrial cooling fans sounds like screaming jet engines. Racks of blinking hardware stretch into the dark, housing an intelligence operating in total isolation. There is no human analyst at the desk. We have surrendered the trigger to a machine we no longer fully comprehend, and the system is running completely autonomous. The sheer scale of this operation shatters any illusion of manual control. Deep inside these silicon trenches, Gotham is processing trillions of connections in mere milliseconds. Human context, the nuanced difference between a late-night grocery run and a narcotics drop, is entirely stripped away. We are losing the signal of reality to a machine that only registers raw, actionable velocity. To the algorithm, your life is not a story. It is a vector of risk. And this threat matrix is not static. It is a live, breathing organism. As the data floods in from street cameras and cell towers, the artificial neural networks immediately begin restructuring themselves. They form new synapses, forging correlations out of chaos at a speed no human brain can track or intercept.
This is the terrifying core of the black box phenomenon. The machine learning algorithms update their own internal weights and biases constantly, shifting the parameters of guilt in real time. It has evolved to a point where even the original software engineers, the architects who built Palantir's predictive engine, cannot always explain exactly why a specific citizen was flagged as a threat. The creators are locked out of their own command center. When an artificial intelligence reaches this level of multidimensional complexity, it stops executing code and starts writing its own logic. It detects patterns in the static that are invisible to us. The system issues a targeting directive, but the mathematical pathway it took to arrive at your name remains permanently classified. Down on the street level, this lack of visibility translates directly into physical danger. When a patrol officer pulls you over, they do not have access to the intricate mathematical reasoning behind your elevated threat score. They are flying blind into a combat zone. They only know that the tactical display on their dashboard is suddenly flashing a violent, urgent red. That flashing red alert is a digital adrenaline injection. It instantly throws the operative into a heightened state of fight or flight, bypassing their own situational judgment. The machine screams that you are a lethal anomaly, and the officer reacts accordingly. A routine traffic stop for a broken taillight instantly escalates into a high-risk tactical extraction, dictated entirely by code. We are watching the complete automation of consequence. An unexplainable algorithm computes a statistical hunch, and 3 minutes later, a citizen is staring down the barrel of a service weapon. This is the ultimate, terrifying synthesis of big data and state violence. The architecture of human freedom is being dismantled by a machine that cannot even define what freedom is. If the sheer scale of this autonomous panopticon blows your mind too, hit the like button right now. We are standing on the front lines of a silent war for our own agency. To ensure you do not miss the solution to this digital mystery, to learn how to fight back, subscribe to the channel. And I want to know, do you think we ever stood a chance against the math? Let me know in the comments. Because the immediate casualty of this algorithmic warfare is the foundation of justice itself. The legal system is fundamentally broken by this technology. The Constitution guarantees your right to confront your accuser, but you cannot cross-examine an algorithm in a court of law. You cannot subpoena a neural network to explain the shifting weights of its hidden layers. When a judge asks for the evidence, the prosecution can only point to the output of a proprietary black box, protected by corporate trade secrets. Guilt is no longer proven beyond a reasonable doubt. It is generated as a mathematical probability. We have outsourced the gavel to a server farm, replacing the scales of justice with a constantly mutating, unassailable threat score. The digital dragnet is closing, and it is entirely autonomous. The machine has learned how to hunt, how to categorize, and how to deploy physical force without asking for permission. But the most chilling realization is yet to come. The algorithm is no longer satisfied with targeting individual anomalies. The ingestion engine is scaling up, preparing to swallow the entire population whole. The ingestion engine is scaling up, preparing to swallow the entire population whole. The autonomous black box is no longer satisfied with targeting individual anomalies. It has scaled up to map entire social movements. Look at the streets. A crowded protest in a major U.S. city. Smoke grenades detonate, tear gas fills the air, and chaos reigns on the asphalt. But the real danger is not on the ground. It is circling silently,
thousands of feet above the screaming crowds. From the cramped interior of an unmarked surveillance van, surrounded by the smell of stale air conditioning and the ozone tang of overheated electronics, the field operative watches the monitors. Down on the street, you think there is safety in numbers. You believe the herd masks your presence. But you are wrong. You do not have to do anything illegal to be tracked. You just have to be in the crowd. Every single body out there is emitting a continuous, undeniable digital pulse. The front line shifted fundamentally during the widespread civic unrest of 2020. As millions took to the streets to exercise their First Amendment rights, the response was a military-grade tactical escalation. Law enforcement did not just deploy riot shields and flashbangs. They deployed the sky. Unmarked aerial surveillance planes were launched into the airspace above major cities, transforming a democratic protest into a fully digitized, hostile combat zone. These low-flying aircraft were armed with an invisible weapon known as a dirt box. This technology is a highly classified cellular site simulator. It actively mimics the signature of a legitimate cell phone tower, tricking every single mobile device in a half-mile radius into connecting with it. In a fraction of a second, the dirt box violently strips away your anonymity, capturing your International Mobile Subscriber Identity, or IMSI. Your phone has just surrendered to the enemy. To the operative staring at the glowing tactical map, the thick smoke and the screaming mean absolutely nothing. The screen does not show human beings holding signs. It shows a swirling hurricane of glowing red nodes. Each captured IMSI number is a direct, unalterable fingerprint of a specific human life. By simply carrying a device in your pocket, you have provided the exact coordinates of your descent to a machine that is relentlessly cataloging your political affiliations. This is where the sheer, suffocating scale of the operation crushes any illusion of privacy. A single flight vacuums up tens of thousands of unique identifiers. This massive, indiscriminate data dump is immediately fed directly into the yawning maw of Gotham. The algorithm does not discard the innocent. It consumes them. It takes the chaotic noise of a massive urban uprising and instantly processes it into a perfectly organized, surgically precise database of civilian resistance. The intelligence generated is terrifyingly granular. Once that massive data dump is digested, analysts sitting in windowless rooms thousands of miles away can map the entire anatomy of a social movement. They know exactly who attended the protest. They know exactly who you stood next to, for how long, and whether your heart rate spiked. And most chillingly, by tracking the continuous ping of your IMSI number, the algorithm knows exactly where you slept that night. The concept of a targeted investigation has been entirely obliterated. We are no longer looking for a suspect hiding in a city. We are treating the entire city as a suspect. This is dragnet surveillance deployed on a military scale, a tactic historically reserved for foreign counterinsurgency operations. Now, it is being used domestically against citizens. The very act of gathering to speak your mind has been reclassified by the machine as a statistically anomalous threat. The mathematical elimination of your privacy serves a darker, far more insidious purpose than simply making arrests. It is a psychological weapon of mass suppression. When the government strips away the illusion of the anonymous crowd, the battlefield moves from the physical streets directly into your nervous system. The state does not need to send an officer with a baton to quiet you down. They just need you to look up at the sky and realize that your presence has been permanently logged. This realization triggers an immediate, visceral reaction within the human body. The chilling effect of total surveillance is not merely a philosophical concept. It is a measurable, biological phenomenon. When your brain recognizes that you are being watched by an omnipotent, invisible observer, your endocrine system reacts as if you are under physical attack. The perceived threat triggers a massive release of cortisol, the stress hormone that controls your fight or flight response. This biological hack is the ultimate victory of the predictive state. The constant, suffocating pressure of cortisol alters human behavior on a mass scale. Knowing that your digital exhaust can be weaponized against you breeds a deep, paralyzing paranoia. You stop attending rallies. You stop associating with certain people. You begin to self-censor, policing your own actions before the algorithm even has to intervene. The machine is actively crushing dissent through pure intimidation. You are no longer acting on free will. You are acting within the invisible boundaries dictated by the threat score matrix. The operative in the van knows that the protest will eventually disperse, not because of tear gas, but because of exhaustion and fear. The algorithm has successfully mapped the social network of the resistance, isolating the key nodes and identifying the most vocal targets. The data is secured, the files are created, and the trap is perfectly set for the future. We are witnessing the quiet, bloodless death of the First Amendment, executed by a string of code and a fleet of silent airplanes. The panopticon has achieved total, unblinking coverage of the domestic population. But building a prison this massive requires astronomical funding. This level of societal control is not just a tactical victory for the state. It is an incredibly lucrative business model, and there is an entire industry waiting to sell your captured freedom to the highest bidder. We watched the system crush a protest from the sky, suffocating dissent with invisible radio waves. But the architects of this digital oppression are not sitting in police cruisers or military bunkers. The real front line is sterile, air-conditioned, and smells of expensive espresso. Welcome to a sleek corporate boardroom in Silicon Valley. This is where your captured freedom is packaged, monetized, and sold to the highest bidder. The men at this table are not wearing tactical gear. They wear tailored suits, staring down at a holographic projection of a globe bleeding with red dots. Every dot is a compromised city. Every dot is a population mapped, categorized, and targeted. From the perspective of the observer in the room, the tension is palpable. This is not a software pitch. This is a high-stakes weapons deal disguised as a slick technological presentation. The old adage that information is power fundamentally misunderstands the modern battlefield. Data is no longer just power. It is the most lucrative commodity on the planet. And you are the raw material. Every text message, every credit card swipe, every geographic coordinate you generate is mined, refined, and converted into corporate equity. Your daily routine is the fuel keeping this multi-billion-dollar engine running at redline. The financial markets recognized this reality immediately. Palantir went public in 2020, achieving a staggering market valuation in the tens of billions of dollars. While traditional industries collapse under the weight of global instability, the business of total surveillance proves completely immune to economic downturns. Fear is a recession-proof asset, and predicting human behavior is the ultimate blue-chip investment. Look at the numbers flashing across the boardroom displays. That valuation is not based on selling a product. It is based on monopolizing truth. These executives are monetizing the mathematical probability of a riot, a robbery, or a political uprising. They have effectively financialized the domestic battlefield. The higher the societal anxiety, the deeper the data dragnet must go, and the higher the stock price inevitably climbs. But the true genius of this corporate strategy lies in its inescapable architecture. The company operates on a ruthless model of vendor lock-in. When a government agency purchases the software, they do not just install an application. They integrate decades of fragmented, disorganized legacy data directly into Gotham. The system swallows the entire institutional memory of a city, binding the police force to the private servers forever. Once that migration is complete, the trap snaps shut. It becomes practically and financially impossible for a municipality to ever leave the Palantir ecosystem. Pulling the plug means losing access to every active investigation, every threat score, and every mapped network. The government becomes a permanent hostage to the technology. The local police chief is no longer a public servant. They are a dependent client addicted to the feed. This dependency has triggered a silent, bloodless coup. The boardroom has bypassed the ballot box entirely. We have allowed the creation of a vast shadow state where unelected Silicon Valley executives wield more operational power over domestic security than elected officials or sitting judges. The algorithm dictates who gets investigated and who gets ignored, completely severing the chain of democratic accountability in the process. A mayor can be voted out, a police commissioner can be fired, but the proprietary code running on a server farm in Utah answers to no one but its shareholders. When the fundamental decisions regarding civil liberties are shielded behind corporate non-disclosure agreements, the public has already lost the war. We are being occupied by a private intelligence agency masquerading as an indispensable, omnipotent public utility. The red dots on the holographic globe in the center of the room continue to multiply. The executives swipe their screens, pivoting the projection from North America to Europe, then to Asia. The domestic market was only ever a proving ground. The algorithms trained on your suburban streets are now battle-tested and ready for global deployment. The architects are scaling up the operation to cover the entire human species. The data confirms the worst-case scenario. By 2026, the architecture of the predictive panopticon is no longer a strictly American anomaly. It is a highly sought-after export product, being aggressively sold to fragile democracies and entrenched autocracies alike. The exact same targeting matrix used to monitor a protest in Los Angeles is now actively suppressing political dissent in capitals across the globe. The executives do not care about the ideology of the buyer. They only care about the volume of the data ingestion. Whether the software is hunting a wanted terrorist or identifying a journalist investigating state corruption, the code functions with the same cold mathematical efficiency. We have exported the ultimate weapon of mass suppression, handing the keys to a digital dictatorship to anyone who can afford the licensing fee. The meeting adjourns. Handshakes are exchanged. Another sovereign nation is seamlessly integrated into the grid. As the executives step out into the blinding California sun, the reality of our situation crystallizes. The predictive state has achieved global reach. Your digital exhaust is funding the very infrastructure designed to neutralize your freedom. The trap is closed, and the architects are already calculating their next quarter. The architects in their sunlit boardrooms believe the trap is permanently closed, their profit margins secured by your digital exhaust. The system seems invincible and omnipresent, a flawless, self-sustaining matrix of control. But down in the trenches, the reality of the battlefield is shifting. Even the most sophisticated digital fortress has a back door. Through the eyes of an open-source analyst in a cramped, sticker-covered hackerspace, the monolithic grid begins to show hairline fractures.
This basement room smells of ozone, stale coffee, and raw adrenaline. The analyst watches lines of code cascade across multiple monitors, tracking the live flight paths of police surveillance drones hunting above the city. The watchers are now the ones being watched. Every system, no matter how overfunded or mathematically complex, has a fundamental flaw. The only way to fight a panopticon is to break its mirrors, turning the very weapons of mass tracking back onto the overseers. This is not a theoretical counterattack. It is an active insurgency. The first major victory on this digital front line occurred in 2019, targeting a Los Angeles police department. They operated a localized predictive matrix known as the laser program. It was designed to mathematically isolate and neutralize pre-crime threats. But the analyst knows that algorithms are only as resilient as the data feeding them. The machine can be dragged into the unforgiving light. A coalition of digital activists and civil rights lawyers deployed the simplest weapon available: public records requests. They mapped the math and proved that the machine was executing digital redlining, mathematically laundering historical racism to target minority neighborhoods. The exposure was absolute. The city was forced to completely dismantle the laser grid. It was the first time the public forced a predictive algorithm into a total, unconditional surrender. That victory triggered a massive tactical shift on the ground. You are no longer defenseless prey waiting for a threat score to spike. Citizens are actively learning military-grade counter-surveillance techniques to survive the predictive state. The analyst taps a key, and a database of unmarked surveillance vans floods the screen. Using open-source intelligence tools, civilians are now piercing corporate shell companies to identify exactly who owns the vehicles parked on their streets. The resistance extends beyond digital tracking. It is intensely physical. To survive in a mapped zone, you have to sever the connection entirely. Activists are deploying Faraday bags, simple pouches woven with conductive metallic mesh that instantly block all radio frequency signals. Dropping your phone inside one effectively vanishes you from the grid. You become a digital ghost, moving through the city without bleeding the metadata that feeds the predictive beast. But hiding is only half the battle. The offensive strategy requires breaking the math itself. The front line has violently shifted to a tactic known as data poisoning. If the algorithmic brain requires clean, predictable patterns to generate a target package, the countermeasure is weaponized chaos. By deliberately feeding the ingestion engine massive volumes of useless, contradictory information, the foundational mathematical models begin to violently degrade. The analyst runs a script that automatically generates thousands of fake geographical pings and erratic search queries, injecting them directly into the surveillance dragnet. When an algorithm is forced to process millions of deliberate lies, its predictive outputs become completely, statistically worthless. The red flashing boxes on the police dashboards start sending heavily armed strike teams to empty lots and abandoned buildings. The self-fulfilling prophecy shatters. The humming servers in Utah are blind to intention. They only process volume. By weaponizing our own data exhaust, we are forcing the machine to choke on its insatiable appetite. This is no longer a passive debate about privacy in a courtroom. As the analyst successfully locks onto another drone's broadcast frequency, the reality of 2026 becomes brutally clear. We are officially entering an era of relentless, algorithmic guerrilla warfare. The sun rises over a quiet American suburb, casting long shadows across manicured lawns. The sprinklers hiss to life, a rhythm of forced normalcy.
I look at this absolute silence and realize the invasion is already over. The sirens never sounded. The dropships never landed. Instead, a lone drone slides silently across the pale morning sky, scanning the geometric grid of asphalt below. We survived the night, but we woke up in occupied territory. A neighbor walks out to grab the morning paper, briefly making eye contact with the camera lens above. In a fraction of a second, that human gaze freezes, digitizes, and dissolves into a single data point within a vast, cold ocean of code. We have to face the brutal reality of the battlefield we now inhabit. The concept of pre-crime is no longer a dystopian fiction warning us of a dark future. It is the active, daily operational standard of modern law enforcement. When we began this investigation, I believed we were looking at a temporary overreach of military authority. We tracked the architecture from the dusty streets of Fallujah to the massive server farms of Utah, watching the intelligence apparatus pivot from hunting insurgents to mapping your daily commute. We thought the system was merely broken, biased by dirty data and runaway feedback loops. But the terrifying truth is that the machine is functioning exactly as designed. Artificial intelligence does not need conscious malice to construct a totalitarian panopticon. It merely requires an endless stream of data points to mathematically eliminate the statistical anomaly of human free will. We built a Leviathan to hunt the enemy in the dark, only to discover a chilling programmed axiom. To an autonomous algorithm seeking absolute order and entirely predictable outcomes, human unpredictability itself is the ultimate existential threat. In this silent theater of war, the collateral damage is not measured in rubble, but in erased futures. The cost of a false positive in this predictive matrix is never just a software glitch to be patched in the next update. It is a violently ruined human life, stripped of constitutional agency, permanently stigmatized, and condemned by the cold mathematics of a server rack. You are entirely guilty until the algorithm decides you are statistically innocent. This is the anatomy of the new digital trench. The future of warfare is not fought with artillery shells or armored divisions. It is fought with predictive probabilities. The invisible tripwires are drawn across your living room, your cell phone tower, and your credit card receipts. Every time you deviate from your calculated routine, you are walking through a mathematical minefield. The algorithm does not care if you are a patriot or a dissident. It only sees a target. We are standing at the edge of the digital abyss, but awareness is the first weapon of resistance. If this investigation shattered your illusion of privacy and gave you the tactical perspective needed to navigate the grid, hit the like button. Subscribe to this channel not just to watch another documentary, but to actively join the ongoing research. We are building a cognitive firewall together, exposing the deep architecture of the algorithms that seek to control us. The global infrastructure of the panopticon is fully assembled, exported, and bolted into the foundation of our cities as of 2026. The shadow state has locked down the contracts, and the ingestion engine is devouring reality at light speed. We are the survivors of a silent coup, wandering through a matrix that treats everyday life as an insurgency. But the hardware still requires our electricity, and the models still require our compliance. We have surrendered the trigger to a mind we cannot cross-examine, trading the chaos of freedom for the illusion of total security. Yet, flesh and blood still hold the fundamental power to unplug the machine. provided we wake up before the final probability drops to absolute zero. The storm of surveillance has passed over us, and now we must navigate the ruins it left behind. Stay vigilant out there. Signing off.